Let the rhythm hit 'em.
I want to welcome everyone to this special edition of Just Chillin'. My name's Jim Joyner, your urban navigator. And there's nothing wrong with your set. Don't adjust it, folks. This is real hair underneath my chin, you see. This is the older, more mature look. Don't get excited. And don't write in and let me know whether you like it or not. We're not starting a contest unless you want to send $1 with each entry, and then we'll talk about it. We hope you'll stay with us for this program. Again, as always, and every Just Chillin' show, we have valuable information, information that can help you. And this program's no different. We're going to talk about adolescence, talk about the Adolescent Consortium here in Cleveland. You're going to learn about that. Most of you probably never heard about the Adolescent Consortium. You'll know. We're going to talk with our guests about some issues that impact adolescents. And we're even going to define what it means to be an adolescent. It's a word that we use a lot, certainly adults, but maybe we all don't have a true understanding of what that means. So stay with us for this program. It's going to be interesting. My guest to my right is Elise Ellick, right? I got it right?
Correct, you certainly did.
And she wears a couple different hats, so bear with me. She's director of the Adolescent Consortium, Center for Adolescent Health, Case Western Reserve University. And also, Elise is a teen counselor with the Division of Adolescent Medicine, Metro Health Medical Center, Women and Children's Pavilion.
That's a mouthful, isn't it?
It is. Let's break it down. First of all, a little bit about yourself so our viewers can maybe identify with you or not. Cleveland resident?
Cleveland resident, and I've lived in Cleveland, grew up in Shaker Heights, went off to college, returned to Cleveland after finishing my education, and have worked at Metro Health for the past 15 years in the Division of Adolescent Medicine, and very much a part of the community, and I remember Cleveland from the 60s, and so I always have, I think, my own perspective on all the changes.
Very different Cleveland.
Very different Cleveland in many ways, yes.
Yeah. I am a transplant here from Indiana. I came in the 70s, and looking over the 30-year span, very different, even the downtown.
Oh, yes.
I remember the time when 6 o'clock, nobody was there.
That's right.
And now there's life, and it truly is the best location in the nation. What does it mean to be director of Adolescent Consortium, Center for Adolescent Health? That title means what for you?
Well, it's a mouthful, but what it means basically is consortium means a group. And so the Adolescent Consortium means a group of agencies here in the Cleveland area, Northeast Ohio area, that are really dedicated to promoting adolescent health. And so we have healthcare, human service, and educational institutions that meet 4 times a year, and we have workshops, we have professional development seminars, and the idea behind that really is to help those who are working on behalf of adolescent health have a way to work together and do networking and to know about each other's services so that we can be effective in referring teenagers to the kinds of services they need to improve their quality of life.
And then that other hat you wear is teen counselor, Division of Adolescent Medicine. What does a teen counselor do?
Well, the teen counselor wears lots of different hats. I really see myself as a health educator. I also see myself as an advocate for the teens that I see. So when a teenager comes for a visit at Metro Health and comes to the Division of Adolescent Medicine, in addition to having their medical care, they're also going to spend probably some time with me, and we're going to talk about how they're doing, whether or not they're having particular concerns at home or at school. We're going to talk about what specific needs we need to address at that particular visit. We're going to kind of anticipate how we can help them move forward if they're having kind of some rocky issues that need to be addressed. So we really try to capture the whole situation for each patient, not just the medical piece.
Elise Ellick is my guest. She's a teen counselor, Division of Adolescent Medicine, also director of the Adolescent Consortium, Center for Adolescent Health, Case Western Reserve University. We're using that word. We've used it a few times. Let's define adolescent. What does that mean?
Well, I think that if we talk about adolescents as a special population, as far as the American Medical Association is concerned,
I think every parent will say that adolescents
would
is a
agree
very
with that.
special
Yes,
population.
would concur. I think that it's really important to know that historically, the American Medical Association has defined adolescents as the age range between age 12 and 23. And when we think about...
Whoa, I'm going to stop you. 12 and 23.
12 to 23, that's quite a stretch stretch. That's quite a spectrum. And so from the beginning of puberty to well into the early adult years. And I think that many times when we think about adolescence, we think about a very discrete amount of time, and we think about perhaps adolescence ending when someone graduates from high school or go on to college. But really, we're talking about up into the 20s. And so we really developmentally want to think about adolescence as being a number of changes that unfold over time. And those changes hopefully are moving towards young adulthood and being able to be self-sufficient and independent and make good, healthy decisions, etc. But there's a learning curve there. It's not something that happens with a birthday.
Does it have to do with just the cognitive, the learning, or are there some physiological, some physical parameters to help us define or know when we're out of adolescence or still in adolescence? Because again, that 12 to 23 is a wide range. How do we know? 21-year-old, how might we assess his or her still being in that adolescent phase?
Well, I think we can talk about it from a couple of perspectives. One might be if we're talking about from a health point of view or a medical point of view, adolescence begins at puberty. If we want to talk about the other end of the spectrum, someone who's in their 20s.
I apologize, but again, puberty for some may not understand what that is or have some misgivings. So the beginning of puberty means the beginning of what?
The beginning of the development, the physical development, emotional development, psychological development, that really marks the early stages of adulthood. And so for a young woman, when she reaches her menarche or begins her menstrual period, for the young man, when he begins to have changes in his sexual characteristics that let him know that he's moving towards young adulthood.
Body hair where there wasn't body hair.
Exactly.
Voice begins to change.
Exactly.
Maybe starts growing facial hair or it gets in
Absolutely.
thicker. Women's bodies also begin to change, less rounded, more curves, widening the hips. So that time, and there's a lot of hormonal changes that precede that. I mean, that's changing, which is why the body changes, right?
Yes.
And that can be a real difficult time just in terms of the psychological makeup of the individual, right?
I would agree. I think there's a very delicate balance to be struck, and when if we see a teenager, for example, at Metro Health, we're going to spend some time talking with that young person about the changes that they're experiencing, socially, emotionally, physically, what the significance of those changes are, and find out what questions they have and what concerns they have. Probably one of the most common questions that teenagers have is, am I normal? Am I okay? Am I like my friend? And so we want to do some teaching, and we want teenagers to have a knowledge base to accompany the changes that they're experiencing.
I must still be an adolescent. I think that question at least 2 or 3 times a day. Am I normal? And matter of fact, my friends even ask me that. So I don't know what that means, but reality check.
We're all works in progress. That's what that means.
22, 23, 21. Again, what stops to say we're out of that adolescent phase? Is it just in my thinking?
Well, I think that there are kind of a number of markers, and legally, on one hand, we can say when you reach 18, you can join the service, join the military. So from that perspective, the government considers you an adult and no longer an adolescent at that age. But if we were to think about what kinds of milestones or landmarks we would look at to determine whether or not someone is really growing into young adulthood, we would look at whether or not they were self-sufficient financially or economically, whether or not they were in the process of getting some vocational training or in school, or whether or not they were taking some steps towards learning about themselves in a role independent from their family of origin.
I'm 52. I'm one of the baby boomers. I'm getting older. And truly, when I think back to high school, I can't imagine anyone thinking, certainly acting out what we've recently read about in the news and seen those overt situations. Are there differences as you look at adolescence and what's going on kind of historically and what we see today?
Well, that's a big question. I guess I would start by saying I really don't think that there's a big difference between adolescence in 2001 and what it meant to be an adolescent in 1960 or 1970. I think that one of the things that we've seen recently is that there have been some really unfortunate precedents that have been set in terms of how people act out their rage, their anger, their despair, their depression. And the availability of firearms is something that really has accelerated in recent years. And so when we look at what used to happen 30 years ago when a young person was very, very angry, perhaps there was a fist fight or there was, someone got injured, but there wasn't a lethal weapon available. And so when we talk about just the availability and the proliferation of firearms, we're really talking about access. And I think that that really has been the crucible upon which we've seen these really unfortunate consequences where people who do have a history of troubled behavior have not been identified or not been able to get the services that they need, and that attention has not been paid to them. And so we have seen that acted out in a way that seems very random and seems very isolated, but really, if we really look back, we can see that that was one predictable outcome of someone in trouble. And
you, in your answer, you also remind me of the fact that there is no one variable we can look at, but a combination of things that kind of bring us to the point where today's choices that adolescents have is maybe somewhat different, or they act on those. The choices were probably always there.
Yes.
But it's, again, a different world and a combination of. If you've just tuned in, we're talking with Elise Ellick, who wears a couple hats, director of the Adolescent Consortium, the Center for Adolescent Health, Case Western Reserve University, and she is also a teen counselor, Division of Adolescent Medicine, Metro Health Medical Center, Women and Children's Pavilion. And we're talking about adolescent issues, kind of got a little off the track. Surgeon General, the ex-Surgeon General, said of adolescents, I don't know if you remember the quote.
His words, yes. David Satcher, who was appointed by President Clinton, he was the first African-American Surgeon General appointed in the United States. And he grew up in poverty in the South and came a long way from his beginnings through a lot of hard work, and is actually, he received his medical degree from Case Western Reserve University several decades ago. But at a recent commencement address, he stood up to offer some words and a special message to all of the graduates, and I thought he gave a wonderful message because his opening remarks were, "We love you, we want to spend time with you, you are important to us." And I thought that that was such a warm and sincere message, and one I really embraced, because it suggests to me that Dr. Satcher recognizes and wanted the young people in his audience to recognize that it really is the responsibility of adults to provide a future for young people worth having. And I think that that's very, very important.
There's a lot of things, and we're coming close to our mid-break, a lot of things vying for the attention of young people in America today. Who, real quick, at least, should they be looking at in terms of models and role models? Who are those persons they should be looking up to?
Well, I think that one of the most important things that any young person can do is really to develop a community of supportive people, to be a safety net for them. And I think that if we think about a young person who, for example, is in high school, when they're in high school, they've got a very structured environment. Once they leave high school, there are a lot of different challenges that a person will face. Should I go on in my education? Should I look for employment? Should I think about vocational training? Should I join the service? There are lots of different avenues, but these are all very big life decisions with really no way of knowing from prior experience whether or not a person's making the right decision. So I think it's really important to identify those adults in the community that young people feel comfortable with, have confidence in, feel that they are supportive and interested in their future, so that they can feel that they have people they can turn to give them guidance and support, and to help them when they, hit a place that's kind of rocky.
And safe to say, maybe in summary, that people you can talk to. That safety net could also be adults you can talk to. If you've just joined us, I'm talking with Elise Ellick, who's teen counselor, Division of Adolescent Medicine, Metro Health Medical Center, Women and Children's Pavilion, and also wears the hat of director of the Adolescent Consortium, the Center for Adolescent Health, Case Western Reserve University. We're talking about adolescents. You'll want to stay tuned, but as always, we have our mid-program break, and we're going to listen to the Transitions and their number 10 cut off of their CD. It's entitled A Rainy Night in Harlem. They tell me it's a new group with the old school sound, so listen up.
Yo.